How is it possible to explain a color to someone who was born blind? The answer to this question is really interesting. We talked to someone who was born blind to really understand it. So stay until the end. Why don't they make medicine that tastes good for everyone? My son is autistic. I don't know if autistic people have more difficulty taking bad tasting medicine, but I know that my daughter, Melissa, hates taking medicine. This is a question I always asked myself until I found out that it can actually be good for medicine to taste bad. Most of the time, medicine is bitter. Just remember the taste of Novalgina. It's horrible. And that's a chemical issue. It's because of the medicine itself. But then there's something about us. Our bodies are prepared to find anything toxic to be bad. And medicine is, in a way, toxic, right? It's affecting our bodies. So it's natural for us to think medicine tastes bad. To make things more complicated, children usually take medicine in liquid form, not as pills, because for children, you need to dose the medicine more precisely. You need to give more specific, accurate doses since they're so small, and the medicine has a much stronger effect on them. And then, the child really tastes the medicine. Why don't they just add a cherry, tutti frutti, or strawberry flavor so it tastes like a delicious juice? First, what do they try? There are a lot of medicines with an artificial flavor that I don't even know if it helps or makes it worse because it's really bad. But just imagine if the medicine actually tasted good. If it was something amazing and the child looked at the bottle and said, "Wow, I want more. Give me that acetaminophen. I'll drink it all." There would be so many cases of children getting poisoned. It would be terrible. So in the end, the bad taste of the medicine is actually a double protection. Your body recognizes it's taking something unusual that will affect it, and it already tastes bad, so it's good that kids won't want to take medicine, as if it's juice. Do electronics that are plugged in still use energy anyway? Yes, they do. If it's plugged in, it's using energy even if it's turned off. For non-electronic items like a blender or fan, it won't matter since a switch blocks the energy from passing through. Now for electronic things where you press a little button that's not mechanical, just a simple button like a remote control, yes, that thing is using energy. The television, for example, when it's waiting for you to press the remote control to turn it on, it's using energy. Usually, it's not a lot of energy, okay? One time, we borrowed a super precise device to measure how much a cell phone charger used when you weren't charging the phone, and it came out to about 60 cents worth of electricity in a year. It's very little. We can pretty much disregard that amount. I can't vouch for other electronics, okay? Shall we do a test here? I'm gonna get a thermal camera from Manuel do Mundo. The thermal camera can see things that are hot. It sees things that we can't see. And then, we can see here what's using energy by its temperature. Because if it's using energy, it's heating up a bit. And the thermal camera will notice. Let's go. Look, this is Jan's. You can see that he's really red in the image. Here we have the computers on his desk. Look, the computer is hot, which means it's using a lot of energy. This adapter here for the video card is also really hot. It's interesting to see this, right? This power supply that charges the batteries is hot. The power strip behind it isn't hot. That means it's safe. It's not using energy. And the chargers that aren't charging anything didn't get hot either. Now, a charger that's charging shows up very red in the image. Look, this here is the power supply for the light above me. You can see that it's really red. Down here, we also have a power supply for another light. It's red too. Once again, the power strip is cool. None. Back here, there's something that turns red that I hadn't thought of, which is the dimmer. It's a little knob that we turn to control these lights up here, okay? But inside it, it probably has a resistor. So this resistor heats up, right? Similar to a heating element, like the one in an electric shower. And around it here, look, you can notice that it heated up the whole wall. It heated up everything. So it's something that uses energy, and a lot of energy. These bulbs here, they get hot in the back. You can see that the back is really hot, and besides that, there's nothing too surprising. What uses energy gets hot. What doesn't use energy doesn't get hot. Or how can we see the moon if it's so many kilometers away from us? Every time I ask for questions for Iber to answer, something like this comes up, as if our eyes had a limit to how far they can see, as if we couldn't see past a certain distance. Here's another question from the same batch. Is there a record for the farthest distance seen with the naked eye? Our eyes don't have limits. We can see something that's at any distance. The question is, can the light from that thing actually reach our eyes so that we can see it? Is there enough light reaching us so that we can see it? Sometimes, yes. Most stars are really far away, much farther than the sun, the moon, or anything else. But we can still see them because their light gets here from far away, and it's still strong. But what is the most distant star? What is the most distant thing we can see with the naked eye from planet Earth? It's actually a record. It's even in the Guinness Book. Look, the Triangulum Galaxy can be seen by an observer with sharp eyesight. It's a galaxy about half the size of the Milky Way, located approximately 3 million light years from Earth. That means when you look at the Triangulum Galaxy, you're seeing light that left there 3 million years ago. So yes, we can see really far with our own eyes. How do plants grow on power lines? You've never seen it. Come here. So we can take a look. Look, it's right above me here on the wire. It's a little plant called Tillandsia, or Gravitazinho dumato. It's a little bromeliad. Look, I managed to get a branch here that has one. It grows on top of other plants, but it doesn't take nutrients from the other plant. In other words, it's not a parasite, it's an epiphyte. As we say, the cool thing is that it can grow not only on top of any plant, but on pretty much anything. On top of a wall, on top of a rock, even on top of a power line. And maybe you're wondering, hey, if there's no soil, where does this plant get its nutrients from? How is it able to do that? It's the plant's own leaves that are able to absorb everything from the air, water, oxygen, even mineral salts. And, of course, it does photosynthesis. It takes carbon dioxide from the air with the help of sunlight, and then it gains mass, absorbing carbon this way. Maybe someone out there might ask how this plant doesn't get shocked on the power line. It's for the same reason that birds can perch without getting shocked, because both the plant and the birds don't touch both wires at the same time. You need to touch both wires to get shocked to close a circuit, or you can also touch one wire and touch the ground. Then you'll serve as a connection between the wire and the ground, and then you'll get shocked. One more member question, because there are several in this video. Okay, just for the record, whoever is a member of Manual do Mundo gets the videos in advance. We publish them for them first, and I guarantee at least one question here on Iber Respond, but I end up answering more questions. We charge the minimum possible there, the lowest fee that exists on YouTube to be a member of Manual do Mundo. Deal. It's Renato Mariscal. I'd like to know more about the behind the scenes of Manual do Mundo. You show that some videos take days, even weeks to produce. So, do you have to be producing content in parallel? Do you have a stockpile of videos to release to keep the channel at a steady release pace? Yes, we do. Currently, as we record this, we already have a month's worth of long videos stockpiled, so we have about 8 videos ready that just need to be published. But there are several others being made at the same time. Today is March 17th. It's the day I'm doing the research for this Iber Respond episode that you're watching now. Let's see how many long videos we're producing at the same time. I'm only counting the big videos, over 10 minutes long and in landscape format, not the short ones for shorts or Instagram. This covers the Titanic story told with this 9,000-piece Lego set. Seeing sunspots through the telescope, giant 3D printed spinning top, a flying ball like a drone, walking on top of cornstarch slime, equipment that turns an old camera into a digital camera, aerogel. Julia is making a holographic chocolate. I've already lost count of how many videos there are here, and we're gonna cut this toilet in half to show how the physics inside the toilet works. I forgot 2 more. There's a video about mental challenges. This one was about prism, glasses we were building to see things upside down. But I think in the end, we won't use it in the video. And there's this test we're doing with meat and strawberries in resin, so we can later try it with other things. Now it's over 10 easily, I'm sure. Rafael asked a question, and it kind of continues here. How many terabytes of video have you archived over the years? Do you keep the raw footage? For those who don't know what raw footage is, when we're recording a video, we record much more than what is shown. We often record the same thing multiple times, but if I mess up a line, it doesn't end up in the video. There's a selection, an editing process, and only the best parts make it in. Sometimes we have 20 hours of footage for a 15-minute video. That's what raw footage is. It's everything you've recorded. And yes, we've been saving the raw footage since 2012. We have pretty much all of it. And it takes up a lot of space. I checked today. And we have 170 terabytes of raw video footage. In the beginning, I used to store it on regular hard drives, 3 terabyte drives, until there came a time when I had 8 drives to store everything. 1 backup, but I also had a mirror of the backup. There were 16 hard drives, and they kept failing. Occasionally, one would break, and I'd lose all its data forcing me to buy a new drive and mirror it again. Today, we store everything in the cloud, on computers, on the internet, and we don't even know where these computers are located. It's much easier for everyone to access these files and so on, and we think it's much safer than saving things on a hard drive. If there's no up or down in space, how did they decide what's north and what's south? This thing about north being on top is just a convention. Actually, it's not really on top, it's just that the globe is made that way. There really isn't an up or down. Why is north on top of the globe? Because it was the Europeans who started making complex maps and everything. And it's easier for you to see Europe if north is on top. For us who live in the southern hemisphere, maybe it would be easier if we had the globe upside down. Definitely for those who live in Australia, New Zealand, Chile, Argentina, and Uruguay.
Seria melhor se tivesse globo de ponta cabeça.
By the way, wouldn't it be worth it for us to release an upside-down Manual do Mundo globe? What do you think? Please leave your comments, because I'm serious. But anyway, this is Manual do Mundo, and we like to explain things properly. All the way to the end, how it was decided where north is and where south is. South means the side of the sun. Well, why is that? Because if you're in the northern hemisphere, which is where this word was invented, the sun usually passes closer to the south. So, you know that for that direction, people called it Sol. Sol, Sol, Sol. The word north comes from left, because north is to the left of where the sun rises. So, if you look here, the sun is right. North is to the left, south is to the right. That's true anywhere in the world. You don't have to be only in the northern hemisphere. And that's where north and south come from. It has nothing to do with up or down. They're just references from where you are. And on planet Earth, does it make sense for there to be north and south? Because we have an axis of rotation, right? Planet Earth spins as if it were on a barbecue skewer. So the place where this barbecue skewer is stuck into planet Earth is one pole, and where it comes out on the other side is the other pole. So these points do make sense geographically, yes. And the names we gave to them are north and south in this century. What are the chances of a normal person like me taking a trip to space? I looked it up today to see how much a trip to space costs at this moment. If you want to be a space tourist and buy a flight for, let's say May, let's see how much it costs. There are two types of flights here, okay? The most common one is the suborbital flight. What does that mean? You go up to space with the rocket, and then the rocket comes back down. You don't go around the planet Earth. You don't enter orbit. You'll get to feel that sensation of floating at some point, but it's not the whole time. Okay? It's different from the astronauts who stay up there on the International Space Station because they're orbiting around the Earth. That's when you lose the sensation of gravity. But let's get to it. How much do suborbital flights cost? With Virgin Galactic, it's $600,000. And with Blue Origin, it's a bit cheaper, $450,000. These are amounts that are completely out of reach for ordinary people like us, right? But there is a company. No, I won't say it's cheap. It's just that they offer a trip to the International Space Station. And this trip lasts 10 days. So you have to stay there for a while and everything costs a whopping $70 million. Or, I don't know, zillions of reais. All right, today it's pretty much unfeasible, but this price tends to drop over the years. This price tends to go down. We can't know exactly how much it's going to drop, but we can make a comparison with how much airplane tickets have dropped throughout history. And there's a really interesting survey I saw here. Some people did a study of ticket prices over 80 years from Los Angeles to Boston in the United States. It's a long trip, okay? Los Angeles is here on the Pacific Ocean, and Boston is on the opposite end. Over there on the other side, closer to New York on the Atlantic Ocean. It's a flight that crosses the entire United States, so you get a good idea. Look, in 1941, this flight had to make 12 stops. The price at the time, already adjusted for inflation, would be $4,400 for a flight. In 1978, a little before I was born, the number of stops was 5. So you had to stop 5 times along the way, and the price had already dropped a lot. It was $915. In 2024, you can already make this flight in 5 hours, and you can find it for $120. So over 80 years, the price of a plane ticket dropped about 40 times. The price can be divided by 80. If the same thing happens with the ticket to space, we would have a ticket to space by the end of the century for $11,000, which would be about 60,000 reais at today's exchange rate. It's still very expensive. It's still not for everyone, but you could sell a car and go to space. Why do humans feel disgusted by certain types of smells? For the same reason we don't like the taste of medicine. It's a warning from our body. So in nature, the moment you see rotten meat, the moment you see poop, when you see vomit, all these things smell really bad. And even visually, they are disgusting. It's a sign we have that there might be something wrong there. You're not supposed to eat rotten meat. You're not supposed to eat poop. You're not supposed to get close to vomit. If someone vomited, it's because there might be poison there. Maybe it's better for you to vomit too. In fact, that's why the smell of vomit makes you want to vomit. If you're in a group where someone vomited, it's better if everyone does, since you likely ate the same food. In short, what your body is telling you is run. It's a trap. Bino. Question from Manuela, 7 years old, Iber. Does cheese smell like stinky feet, or do stinky feet smell like cheese? Yeah, there are some cheeses and some feet that really make us wonder where the line is that separates them, right? There are some bacteria that eat dead skin left on our feet, and that's a really nice environment for fungi and bacteria because it's usually moist. We wear shoes all day long, and then they end up giving off a very characteristic smell that we call foot odor. With some cheeses, something similar happens. There are bacteria that feed on it and also give off almost the same smell. But that's just a coincidence, okay? It doesn't mean that someone took a nice, clean cheese with no smell and rubbed it on a questionable foot, and then the bacteria transferred to the cheese. But if we have to say which came first, foot odor wins. Because, after all, we had foot odor long before we invented cheese. Does the opossum release a stinky spray like skunks? The opossum is this little animal here, okay? A lot of people call it a skunk, and in P-Dade, besides calling it a skunk, sometimes we also called it a fox. It's a pretty smelly animal. If you touch it or get close to it, I don't recommend it. Okay, here where we are at Manuel do Mundo, it's kind of infested with opossums. Today we found out there was one living on top of Oficina dos Fundos. I made this really short video of it. I don't know if you'll be able to see it clearly, but anyway, it's walking there on the roof. At home, we have a very sad story with opossums because they ate 2 little tortoises that Mari bought and then both guinea pigs. But even so, I still feel sorry for them because every now and then we see some opossums all hurt walking around here. If they get into a fight with a dog, they definitely lose. The opossum has some unique things. First, it can resist snake bites. If a Jaraka snake bites the opossum, nothing happens. Another cool thing is that it carries its babies inside its pouch because it's a marsupial. It's related to the kangaroo. But an opossum is not a skunk. A skunk is something completely different. What we usually know as a skunk is also called kangamba or jaratatica, stinky weasel, or zorillo. This animal exists in Brazil, okay? It's a really cute animal, much cuter than the opossum, but it's closer to the weasel, the otter, and the giant otter. And, yes, it releases a jet of stink, a kind of super powerful fart, when it defends itself right near its anus. It has a kind of spray that can shoot a super stinky oil about 3 meters away. This oil contains sulfur, and that's why it smells so bad. So, the animal we need to watch out for, the one that can shoot a stinky torpedo at us, isn't the opossum, it's the skunk. They're still launching space shuttles. Let's understand what a space shuttle is, which is one of the coolest spacecrafts of all time. It's this right here. It's kind of like a big, fat airplane. It would take off on the back of a set of rockets that would detach from this airplane, from this spacecraft. And when it reached space, it could deliver a really heavy payload. It was actually like a bus crossed with a truck. Besides being a spacious, beautiful spacecraft, it could return to Earth and land just like an airplane. The space shuttle landings were historic, incredibly beautiful. And then you could reuse the spacecraft, send it on another mission again. It was amazing. This NASA program lasted 30 years, but it stopped first because of money. Each launch cost about $450 million. It's very expensive. And when the shuttle came back, you couldn't just send it out again right away. You had to do a major overhaul, replace a lot of parts. It was complicated. But the second reason is even worse. It's safety. There were 2 very serious accidents with the space shuttle. The first was the Challenger in 1986. It took off, and can you imagine when the space shuttle takes off? There are a lot of very important people there, filming, huge television coverage and everything. And when it was going up, you could still see it from the ground. It exploded in the air, killing everyone on board. The second accident happened in 2003 with the Columbia shuttle. When it was coming down, it also exploded, disintegrated, and killed 7 people. In total, 14 people died in these space shuttle accidents. Then in 2004, the United States government decided it was going to retire these shuttles. They kept flying for a while, and the last flight happened in 2011 with Atlantis. By the way, a few years ago, I went to visit NASA at the Kennedy Space Center, which is in Florida. There's an attraction where you go into a kind of theater, and they tell the whole story of the space shuttle, how they invented it, and everything else, what the missions were. And at the end of the movie, right at the very end, there's a space shuttle that comes in from the side and stops right in the middle of the screen. At the moment that the space shuttle stops in the middle of the screen, in this kind of diagonal, side view position, the screen opens up, and behind it, exactly in the same position, the same size, is the real Atlantis space shuttle. It's like the space shuttle materializes right in front of you. It was one of the most brilliant things I've ever seen. How come living beings don't rot while they're alive? Yeah. Saying it doesn't rot is a bit much, right? Because with that cheese story, we know it does rot a little, But basically, we don't rot because our body is constantly fighting against it. We have several mechanisms to keep us from rotting, unlike what happens when we die. First of all, our cells are always repairing themselves. If there's any injury, they go there and fix it right away. We have white blood cells, defenses, to fight against any virus or bacteria that enters our body. Our blood circulates, bringing nutrients to the cells and removing the waste left behind. Besides that, our body regulates its own temperature. It regulates acidity levels, it distributes energy, and nourishes all the cells. It's as if we're constantly threatened by being eaten by microorganisms, and our body is fighting, trying to survive. And then, when we die, all of this stops working. That's why we don't rot while we're alive. If the moon were really made of cheese, how many people would it take to eat it? First, it's worth noting that the story of the moon being made of cheese is old and has existed for many years. The people here did some research and found out that there's a fable from the year 1500 that already talked about this story of the moon. Claiming the moon was made of cheese wasn't literally saying it's made of cheese. It was always some situation where a more naive person thought the moon was made of cheese or looked at the reflection of the moon in a lake and tried to grab it as if it were cheese, and so on. But let's do some math here to understand how much cheese the moon would contain, and how big that giant cheese moon would be. We did the math here, converting the size of the moon, calculating how many kilos it would have if it were cheese, and the result was this, a number I can't even pronounce, but it's a 22 with 21 zeros after it. At the same time, we have 8 billion people in the world, rounding up. If we were to divide this cheese among these people, how many kilos would each person get? The individual piece would be about 3 trillion kilos. How long would it take to eat? If each person ate 1 kilo per day, it would take 7.5 billion years, with all human beings eating the moon at the same time. Just so you have an idea, the age of planet Earth is about 4.5 billion years, so I think that's cheese that never runs out. If you find oil in your backyard, it's the government's. But if you find something bad, it's your problem. Why? That's an interesting question. This question probably came up because a farmer from Tabulairo do Norte in Sierra was digging a well and found a sticky black liquid down there, which is probably oil in that region. There are some oil wells. An official analysis hasn't been done yet, but a professor who helped him there managed to see in the lab that it's probably oil. Will he become a billionaire now? No. According to Brazilian law, when you buy a piece of land, what's deep underground on that land isn't yours. When you buy the land, you need to be aware of that. Okay, you can't exploit anything in the subsoil without authorization from the federal government. What's underground isn't yours, it's the country's, at least. At least I think this is an interesting way for us to be able to share with the whole country everything that's found underground in our country. And then there are some problems, right? Because if someone finds oil, it means the government can give authorization for a company to go there and exploit that oil because the government itself doesn't exploit the oil. And then, besides not being able to keep the oil, you won't be able to keep your well. And what's more, your land will be expropriated. But don't worry. It's not such a big tragedy. The person can receive compensation, a very small percentage of that oil that can be exploited, and compensation, a payment for their land if the land is expropriated. You won't become a billionaire like in the United States, but it can be an interesting discovery. Now, Yes, if you find a leaking pipe on your land, well, you'll have to fix it because that's not of interest to the federal government. However, is it possible, or would it be feasible, to have cruise ships or ocean liners with solar panels and electric motors? Shall we do some calculations to figure it out? This photo here is of the Queen Mary 2. It's the largest ocean liner ever built. It's different from a cruise ship. An ocean liner is built to cross the ocean carrying people on a journey, almost like an airplane. A cruise ship is more like a resort on the water, right? It has a theater pool, shows, several restaurants, and so on. And it's usually not prepared to make trips as long as an ocean liner. But all right, let's take the engine of the Queen Mary 2. It has 159,000 horsepower. How many solar panels would we need to make something like this work? If we convert this engine's power to kilowatts, it's 117,000 kilowatts, and a regular panel, like the ones we use on our rooftops. When the sun is at its peak, 1 square meter of this panel can produce about 208 watts ELDA. Or pronounced the American way, if you want to give the word a more American twist. If we divide this by that, we'll find out that we need 562,500 square meters of solar panels. That's a lot. So let's figure out roughly how much area there is on top of the ship. It's 345 meters long and 41 meters wide. But here, I'm going to assume that we'll put a rectangular panel on top of it. Okay, that covers the entire ship, regardless of its design. This panel will have 14,145 square meters. It's much smaller than what we need. Dividing this number by that one, we find out that we would need 40 ships covered with solar panels just to get the power needed to run the engine of a single ship. This assumes the panel generates at maximum capacity, and we could have a much lighter ship already built for that. We could have a much weaker engine, so it would move very slowly. But even so, it's still an absurd challenge. It would have to be a completely different ship from what we know today. I still think it's possible, but it would be really slow, really sluggish. A cool thing for us to try is, does sunscreen protect the skin? If, when we put it on, it becomes transparent, wouldn't it be the same to wear transparent clothes? Instead of using sunscreen, transparent to you. We see sunlight as white, but you know it's a mix of all the colors of the rainbow. When you mix everything together, it becomes white, but there are other colors that we can't see and that are reaching us. If we had superpowers and looked at the rainbow, after the red, we would see another light, which would be the infrared. And what really harms our skin isn't the infrared or the light we can see. It's the ultraviolet. And sunscreen is transparent to visible light. You can see through sunscreen, but it's not transparent to ultraviolet. Depending on the type of sunscreen, when ultraviolet light hits it, it can be absorbed and turned into heat. It can be reflected, but it doesn't go through. So, if you were an animal that can see ultraviolet, the moment you put on sunscreen, you would see your whole face covered in something very visible. By the way, we've already done an experiment here on Manuel do Mundo, where we put on sunscreen and then got close to a black light that emits a lot of ultraviolet. You could definitely notice something on your face. If the sun disappeared right now, would we notice the lack of its light first, or its gravity disappearing? If the sun disappeared right now, you wouldn't feel either of those things immediately. Light, when it's traveling through a vacuum, has an insanely fast speed of 300,000 kilometers per second. But the distance from the Earth to the sun is also huge, about 150 million kilometers. That means that for light to leave the sun and reach us, it takes 8 minutes and 20 seconds. So if the sun disappeared, you know the Earth would go dark in 8 minutes and 20 seconds. But what about gravity? It would disappear at the same moment as the light, because gravity also travels at the speed of light. I know it's strange for us to imagine this, because gravity isn't something we can see, and it's not something we can just isolate and feel directly, but it's very well proven by science. In fact, this is one of the central ideas of Albert Einstein's theory of relativity. Why don't new mountains form? Our dear little planet, when you look at it from the outside, it seems like a solid sphere. But it's not really like that. What's solid is just a thin little shell around it. Inside, our planet is all soft, and this shell is all cracked. It's like if you took a boiled egg and tapped it several times. There would be lots of pieces of shell there on planet Earth. We call each of these shells a tectonic plate, and they don't stay still. One bumps into another, one goes under the other, and this movement creates mountains. The thing is, all of this is extremely slow. We can't see it. I mean, sort of, because sometimes we actually can see it. Where these plates meet, sometimes magma leaks out. And those are the places where volcanoes appear. And then it might happen that a volcano releases so much lava that it forms a mountain. Look here in our Britannica Encyclopedia for Curious People. There's a case like this. In 1963, a new island began to appear in the sea off the coast of Iceland, named in honor of the Norse god of fire. It formed during a nearly 4-year underwater volcanic eruption. It is located in a rift on the ocean floor where the plates beneath the Atlantic Ocean are moving apart. The volcanic material that erupts through these rifts formed the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, which cuts across the ocean floor. If you want to know more about the book, we're leaving the link down below, okay? One cool thing we discovered while doing the research is that there are mountains that are still growing. Mount Everest, for example, grows a few millimeters each year. It's nothing if we think about it in terms of our lives, but over millions of years, it makes a big difference. And of course, at the same time, the mountains are wearing down, right? The sun, the wind, and the rain gradually wear down the mountains in a process we call erosion. And if the mountain isn't growing, it's going to get smaller. That's what happened with the Appalachians, for example, in the United States. They used to be much bigger, but now they're getting smaller. But let's get to the question that started this video, which is how can we explain colors to people who can't see? I did some research. I came up with an answer, but I think it would be much cooler if we could actually talk to and ask people who can't see. So I got in touch with Renan and Jessica. Renan was born with very limited vision and lost his sight early on. Has never been able to see. Let's see what they have to tell us. So, Renan, how are you doing?
I'm good, Iber. How about you? How are you doing?
Thank you for joining us. How do we explain colors to someone who can't see?
Let's go, man. This is very conceptual. So let's take blue, for example. You can explain to a blind person that blue is the color of the sky and blue represents cold. Blue is connected to cool colors. So by giving this context to a blind person about colors, they'll be able to get a sense of them. Not the perception of the color itself, but an understanding of the concept of that color.
Do you think we can draw a parallel with an emotion? If I say that a person is angry, for example, there's no such thing as an angry object, right? But you imagine someone yelling, someone with an angry face. Is that more or less it?
That's more or less it. The more context you give someone about a color, and the better they'll be able to form that color conceptually in their mind. They won't have the visual perception, but they'll have a conceptual understanding of that color. Green is the color of nature, the color of leaves. So by saying that, the person will already be able to form a concept of that color.
And do you have in your mind what each color represents? If I say pink, for example, do you have a concept of that?
The most commonly used ones, yes. Iber, pink, green, blue, yellow. The more traditional ones, yes. What happens is that today, there are variations of colors, right? So that makes it complicated for a blind person. For example, let's take a color that's trendy today, the color nude. How are you going to explain to someone what the color nude is?
I'll tell you, it's not just a problem for people who can't see. If someone asked me what nude is, I wouldn't really know how to answer either.
And nowadays, what also helps us, artificial intelligence. For example, if I get an AI app, install it on my phone and take a picture, it will say this shirt is this color, these pants are that color. Then in my mind, with the conceptual understanding I have of colors, I'll know, hey, this color matches with that color, so I can match these clothes. Or I can ask the artificial intelligence itself, does this color match with that color? And it will already give me an answer. So AI nowadays is helping a lot, even for people who have no vision at all.
Hi, Jessica, how are you?
Hi, I'm good.
How can we explain colors to people who are born blind? That's your case, right?
Yes, I've never understood what colors are. Actually, for me, colors are just words, right? I can't imagine it, but as an adult, I've heard some people say, for example, that brown reminds them of earth and blue of the sky, right? I liked blue when I was a child, but I never had any idea what colors are like.
A question people always ask us is about dreaming. When you dream, I imagine you can't form images. So, what exactly do you dream about?
Dreams are like that for me too. I have sounds and things I can touch and things I don't know. I imagine through touch, for example, a big animal that I can't see, like a lion. I can't put my hand on a lion, but I can imagine it in my head. It's the feeling of the size, that's what comes to my mind. So if I dream, that's how I perceive things too, by hearing and feeling through touch.
And with the experience you have today, when you hear a color, can you always associate it with something? Like if I say, I don't know, oranges, what do you associate that with, for example?
I think of an orange.
But I guess I gave a bad example, right? Because if I say rose, you'll imagine a rose. If I say pumpkin, it's a pumpkin. Anyway,
Yeah. Red, for example. People say it's a color that really suits me. My skin tone, my things, they say it reminds them of fire, of passion, of blood too. But I prefer to associate it with the good things.
yeah, that's how it is for us too. Jessica, thank you very much. That explains it. I think this video deserves a like, doesn't it?